Now, in actuality, what we learned in the shir from yesterday was who's afraid of the big bad Jew? And look how bad the Jew can be in the world. The power of what he has to say. But in the last chapter, we learned that the Jewish people themselves are lost at the time. We are very, very lost. And after reading what he said before, because the fact that in the St. Louis Jewish Light, and it's my hometown paper, so therefore, one time there were 65,000 Jews in St. Louis, and the Orthodox community is growing now. But the rest of the community is a disaster. If the president of the Federation, who puts out the St. Louis Jewish Light, is gay, who has a husband, it just leaves you to think what's going on there, who's there to be able to be Jewish anymore. So, learning to love the lessons of Jew hatred, he says learning to love this, because this is the process. So he says, this is a subject called the messenger who forgot his message. When I was a college student in Toronto, Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel, I know he used to come to Miami Beach where I was, and they pronounce his name Wiesel. But anyway, Elie Wiesel visited. I heard him compare the Jewish people to a messenger that got hit on the head. When the messenger woke up, he could remember 4 things. Who sent him? To whom he was sent? What the content of the message was? And that he was in fact a messenger. The national memory loss, this diminishment of Jewish moral self-confidence, is in fact the true victory of the anti-Semite. What's going on in the St. Louis Jewish Light is the victory of the anti-Semite. I forgot to think whether or not the president of the Federation's husband was Jewish. The main thing is that they're living an openly gay life. It is why philosopher Emil Frankenheim famously declared the concept of the 614th commandment as the moral imperative for Jews not to give Hitler a posthumous victory by what? By assimilating. So perhaps it's time we write a new ending to our story. The process of recovery and personal growth can only begin by acknowledging that in many ways we have lost our way and we need help. As Leonard Cohen poetically warned Montreal's Jewish leadership in a 1963 address. Now, before we begin, we must face that despair that none of us dares articulate, that we no longer feel we are holy. There will be no psalms, there will be no light, there will be no illumination. You have to be in reform to know this, until we confess the position into which we have decayed. He added, this is the declaration that I wait to hear going out of synagogues from the lips of cultural Jews and ethical Jews. This is the confession without which we cannot begin to raise our eyes. The absence of God in our midst. And I am laboring under this misapprehension that the Jewish people represent that testimony on earth, and that without that testimony informing its actions, Jewish survival is nominal, and no more important to me than Armenian survival or Greek survival. The absence of God in our midst is a deep, rotten cavity that has killed the nerve of the people. What's wrong with the president of the Federation of the city of St. Louis County being married to a man? If he's a man, what's wrong with that? But this recognition of our current state can be the first step toward renewal and strength. Just as our ancestors have done throughout history, we can rise and reclaim our connection. with ourselves and with God, so we can move forward with the resilience and embrace our sacred mission. Now he says this is the second approach. Second approach, approach number 2, called Resilience and Grit Judaism. In response to the Nazi Yellow Star, German Jewish World War I veteran Robert Welsh published an inspiring message to his brethren entitled, Wear It With Pride. Now, this is not something new, the yellow armband. Hitler didn't make it up. After April 1st, 1933 could be the day of Jewish awakening and rebirth if the Jews desire it, if they show maturity and greatness within them, and if they are not as misrepresented by their opponents. Under attack, the Jews must acknowledge themselves. It's not true that the Jews betrayed Germany. If they betrayed anyone, they betrayed themselves. It was them themselves, the Jews. Because the Jew did not display his Judaism with pride. Because he tried to avoid the Jewish history. He must bear part of the blame for the degradation of the Jews. Now remember, this is in an atmosphere of people who fundamentally, for the last 3,000 years, are descended from that spirit, who hate Jews, who thinks that Jews stole everything that really rightfully belongs to them. This is the backdrop, this is the gestalt of Jewish existence in Europe, and perhaps coming back around to the United States now. Since October 7th, the choice has been forced upon us by Hamas and the global community, just as Germany challenged the Jews 100 years ago. There's again a unique opportunity to rekindle the Jewish spirit, to rediscover our self-worth that transcends the scars of the past and embraces proud heritage. The choice is not easy, but it's simple. To embrace ourselves, our history, peoplehood, and mission, or to deny it. There's a Jewish bookie who's gotten his name is Portnoy's Complaint. And when confronted with an anti-Semite, he says, well, we should send him over to Auschwitz. How will that help? You need a gritty approach. This gritty approach is expressed humorously in the old Jewish joke about two elderly Jews riding in a train in 1930s Germany. One of them is reading a Jewish paper while the other is eagerly turning the pages of their Stürmer, which is Stryker's violently anti-Semitic Nazi rag. So the one says to the other, how can you read that filth? The first Jew asks. Simple, his friend replies. In your paper, Jews are being beaten, robbed, and deported. But in the Nazi paper, it's all good news. I just found out that the Jews control the entire world. The deepest victory over Hitler and anti-Semitism comes when the Jews stop defining themselves by this hatred and instead embrace what makes us strong, what makes us great, and what our mission is. Our real education begins not when we escape anti-Semitism, but when we confront it. Anti-Semitism, seen from this perspective, actually acknowledges Jewish impact and exposes the failings of the anti-Semites themselves. Embracing our Jewish identity starts with understanding why we have been targets of hate. Why do they hate us? But it flourishes only with a deep understanding of who we truly are. Learning this secret unlocks our potential, not just as a people, but as individuals. The real power of the Jewish people is not about controlling governments or manipulating economies, our detractors falsely claim. It's about each of us striving to become the best versions of ourselves. As the Torah says, we are stiff-necked people. This can mean that we are slow to learn our lessons, but it also signifies a positive trait, the stubbornness and conviction, combined with resilience and clarity of purpose. Baruch Hashem. We can either be stunned, confused, and paralyzed in the face of surfacing Jew hatred, or we can recognize that it arises because of the good we represent. With this understanding, we can stand tall with pride and moral clarity and conviction. Who's afraid of the big bad Jew? To be Jewish is to be a messenger carrying mystical knowledge across thousands of years. Even when we forget the message, we are hunted for that knowledge. Leaving behind the secret doesn't leave behind anti-Semitism. Jewish history has two sides. Jewish greatness shines through even the darkest times, one side, while the other, the hatred of anti-Semites, casts a dull shadow on the other. When Jews look into the eyes of the anti-Semites, they may feel weak, but anti-Semites are actually acknowledging Jewish greatness. Jews with grit and resilience understand that anti-Semitism is not caused by their own actions, but by the anti-Semites issue. We're in front of them. In some way, we are in their way. They see anti-Semitism as a vindication of Jewish impact, not an indictment. For these resilient Jews on the offense, anti-Semitism is a metric of Jewish success. For them, the endurance of anti-Semitism throughout history highlights the incredible journey of the Jewish people through time and space, as well as intellectual and spiritual landscapes. Embracing this perspective, Jews can celebrate their unique heritage, love themselves, and when the necessary, stand up and fight. Today, many Israeli Jews have taken this new attitude, and it is encouraging for our future. These young Israelis have no doubt about the justice of their fight against Hamas and those bent on their destruction. They recognize the deep anti-Semitic bias of much of the international community and institutions like the UN, and frankly, it doesn't bother them too much. They know who they are, and they are proud to be Jewish, and we see it every day. Why be Jewish? The case for the Jews to embrace themselves. Now, the second reveal of October 7th is family. I started this book by discussing October 7th and its aftermath, which has been a horror for Jews, and I've come to realize that it also reveals something very positive. Forced to confront painful new reality, Jews responded with a deep awareness of being family. From all over the world and from the very different backgrounds, Jews touched an intuitive inner sense that many did not even know that they had, and discovered a profound sense of connection with their people. Overnight, in the face of evil and the world's unmistakable double standards against the Jewish people, Jewish identity increased. The Jewish community rallied together in an overwhelming expression of shock, unity, and generosity. Jews gathered in Israel and all over the world with love and energy to volunteer, organize, and provide for those in need in Israel, whether it be emotional or material support. While it is sad that it took bloodshed and suffering to generate such Jewish brotherhood, it's been a beautiful development. The return home was not new. The Jewish people enduring commitment to both our covenantal kinship. Let's say that we have a covenant, a bris between us. And our mission inspired our forefathers, nourished them, and made them amazingly resilient. This is why you are here as a Jew today. This resilience is strongest, not among those who fit in, but those who don't. It is gritty Jews who carry on after a civilization collapses rather than sifting through the ashes and mourning the German culture or the Weimar Republic. The flowing of Spain's golden age of the glory days among the gardens and temples of Greece and Rome. These are the Jews who keep going because they remember who they are, why they are, and what their mission is. The Jewish mission is not limited to any single culture or time period. It is for all of humanity and transcends civilization. That is why Jews have the strength to journey across civilization. We could be French, we could be German, French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau wondered at Jewish toughness. We must be the strength of legislation. What must be the strength of legislation, capable of working such wonders, capable of braving conquest, dispersion, revolutions, exiles, capable of surviving the customs, laws, empire of all the nations, which finally promises them by these trials that it is going to continue to sustain them all, to conquer the vicissitudes of all things human, and to last as long as the world. Jews endure because they have always been animated by a grand mission that is about a deep spiritual, the real tikkun olam, and being a light to the nations that includes but goes beyond the social justice, technology, or politics of any particular time or place, any era. Civilizations rise and fall. Don't think that America is the permanent place of the world. Mores and movements change, and the Jewish mission keeps its vision fixed on the eternal. If things change in the United States, which they are changing, I don't know, the battle is in the middle, we'll still be here. The Jewish people are arguably the most persecuted and hence the least privileged nation on the planet. But we were privileged to have a special identity, and so have never mired ourselves in victimhood. Our strength is derived from remaining steadfast in our identity as privileged to be alive, as members of a great family, and for being granted an opportunity and responsibility to play a meaningful role in history. Now, this person is really, this Rabbi Shore, he's really underplayed because the message is so powerful. But the message really needs to get out. It's very, very important. Buy this book, send it to your friends, get your wife or your husband to read it. The scope of our mission is almost unimaginable, and so are the challenges we have undergone. The existence of the Jews after all these thousands of years is a miracle because it's a miracle born of a higher plan and purpose. Many people will bristle at some of these ideas, but this is the Jewish legacy and mission. A world view that our ancestors understood, owned, lived, and died for more than 120 generations. It continues to animate Jewish life today. Now think back when he talked about Abraham. Go back 120 generations to the time of when Egypt and beyond, to the very beginnings of these ideas. But it's powerful ideas. It's the ideas of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of God himself, of the Infinite One. It continues to animate Jewish life today. Now, the Jewish mission has been forgotten by many today, and as bitter a pill as it may be for some to swallow, it's even more loathed by Hitler's, Haman's, and Hamas terrorists who recognize it as a threat. That's the bitter truth that we learn. Not only under communism or Nazism are the ugly moments of history going back to Babylon, Persia, and Rome, now also in our comfortable cities and campuses in America and Europe. We are left with the astonishing yet indisputable reality that anti-Semites cannot defeat us, and as a people we cannot disappear. And so we are here, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live, we may as well own it. Now, let me just see what we're holding here. Well, let's see what we could do. The revolution is our story. The struggle is all humanity's story. It's a playing field. Excuse me, I'll bring this down. It's a playing field of every human life, like the drama of human existence. The civilization gifts of the Jews come in two varieties. They're the gifts of science, innovation, social change, and culture. And there are spiritual gifts that have transformed the world. The intellectual, technological, and scientific impact of the Jews is truly remarkable. But these are all really just the fumes of the deeper impact. There is something inside of this that began more than 3,300 years ago. Rav Kook clarified that the greatest Jewish gifts are those of the Spirit, the knowledge of God, wisdom and moral truth, and transcend technology and politics. Israel also has a richness of physical and technological resources in line with other nations, but the knowledge of God is our specialty, which means that we have the ability to get to the inside of where these ideas and these practical things come from, because God is inside of them. Judaism's vision of the ultimate tikkun olam is the perfection of the world that comes when all people connect to their soul and to God. Violence and oppression and war ceases, and a world of love and peace becomes possible. Our story has been the hidden Jewish mission of building spiritual empire in exile. It was not seen, but it could not be broken. And now, in the closing chapters of our story, the Jewish people are meant to return to their land and recreate a holy national home based on that spiritual mission. We are just getting started on this, and admittedly have made mistakes and have a long way to go, but the vision is clear. Through the vehicle of nation state, with morality imbued in all of our natural structures, which is government, legal system, economic model, army, social structure, and so on, our society will serve humanity as a symbol of love, peace, and spirituality. Now he writes, clarifying the call to action. Being Jewish is not just about feeling proud of a country or celebrating a family member's achievements. It's more than a religion. It's a family and a way of life that encompasses peoplehood, nationhood, morality, ethics, spirituality, and purpose. It's who we are. There are many ways to express a deep connection with being Jewish. Through learning Torah, commitment to Israel, doing mitzvahs, believing in our struggling with God, our community involved in many other ways we will explore in the next chapter. It's not an all or nothing proposition. To be clear, I am not suggesting that everyone has to adopt all of these things to take their place among other people. Each person can find their unique way to connect and grow with our shared heritage. As author Zev Magen writes in his classic John Lennon and the Jews, now let me bring this back. Being a connected Jew has always meant being on fire. Sometimes we simmer slowly, softly, over a low flame. Other times we are all but consumed by a roaring conflagration. But we always burn. How could it be otherwise? Each generation imbibes thirstily from its predecessor, drinking down the bitter with the sweet. We have accumulated over the ages fuel reserves that so vast they make those of Saudi Arabia look like a grease stain. Each century that elapses in our fathomless history, every event we experience, ordeal we endure, feed our ner tamid. The eternal flame of the Jewish passion is in the present. The Jewish people inform who we are as individuals, is a part of who we are, so let's allow it to be expressed. Hitler was right when he declared that in the Jews we see the idea of spiritual epigenetics. The Jewish people spirit is a product of the Jewish person. He speculates that probably many Jews are not aware of the destructive power they represent. Rav Kook expresses the same idea, but he puts it in the right way, the positive way. The Jewish spirit thirsts to improve the world because this spirit of idealism, to bring goodness and perfection to the world, is embodied in the inner soul of Israel. Now we have the choices, to be or not to be. Abraham was the first to choose the mission. His journey established the Jewish people by leaving his homeland and going to a land he had never seen before, toward a life he did not know. That's the Jewish journey. By venturing into the unknown, the original patriarch discovered who he really was. By continuing the journey, one of personal, national, and universal discovery and actualization, we discover who we are. As a Jew, you face a choice. Adopt a defensive stance or embrace resilience and grit. It's not an easy choice. There's deep social pressure against going in at all. And added to that is the weak Jewish education that most of us receive. When I was a child, I had to be bar mitzvahed. Most kids at my Reformed temple started at the 5th grade, and they went 45 minutes twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. You had to get there. The temple wasn't so close. You had to arrange to get there and park carpools and so on and so forth. My mother was more religious, so she had me start at 4th grade. And so I got a little bit better at some of the things because I had to perform at the Passover Seder in my family. So I got a little bit better about reading. So the rest of it, though, was absolutely wasted. Nobody got anything out of it. I can't read Hebrew at all. If there's no, or maybe just broken bone type. If there's no compelling reason to be Jew, if it's just not an accident birth, let's say a quaint cultural acceptance, like I heard Mayor Kahana once say, who do they think they are? A lost Portuguese fishing village? Who do we think we are? Quaint cultural happenance of a last name that ends in Berg or Stein or something like that. Why should you care? These questions deeply affect every young Jew today, whether they are conscious of the pull or not, as Magen eloquently describes. Why bother? Everything logical, indeed every major ideology comprising the modern Western worldview, would appear to be solidly stacked up against such a foolhardy stance. Being committed Jew? Hell. Inertia itself is beating us, with both hands tied behind its back, like their Gentile counterparts. Most young Jewish people of this relatively placid and malleable generation, that is the 60s, it ain't, are more or less going with the increasingly coordinated and egregiously conformist global flow, streaming away from everything the Jewish people once were, away from everything we could let yet be together. Now here we come to the final part. I'm sorry, as this last part, he said, away from everything the Jewish people once were, away from everything we could yet be together. Meaning that the flow of globalism and these ideas that are permeate the universities. Why be Jewish? Let go. The answer to why be Jewish is very deep, and reaching it is not easy. In chapter 6, we spoke of Purim, the holiday celebrating the Jewish victory over our arch nemesis, as the holiday where everything is turned upside down. The deeper spiritual opportunity of Purim is achieved when Jews fulfill the commandments to become so drunk that they lose sense of some cognitive faculties until they no longer see the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. The insight is that sometimes getting drunk can help us get clarity by letting go of the ego and quieting the mind, which often tends to overanalyze. One day a year we uplift ourselves spiritually using the power of wine. The famous rabbi, the Maharal of Prague, explains the idea of being a Jewish drunk. They are usually seen stumbling around and telling everyone how much they love them. That by going beyond, we connect with our souls and see the world from that vantage point. From the soul's point of view, we can learn from the anti-Semites. The line between evil Haman and blessed Mordecai gets blurred. From the evil we see our goodness, from the hatred we see our power to love. From the drive to kill Jews we see that we ate different. We can embrace our identity as Jews. We can connect to ourselves. We can realize on a deeper level the beauty of being a member of a people so special that evil always chooses us. He writes, I hope this book can help you reach that level of soul clarity without getting drunk, but rather by using your intellect and listening to your soul. Now, it's very interesting because in our series of these tremendous people who write in English, we have Rabbi Yosef Chaim Memra. Talks of what it takes in order to listen to your soul. That's one of the things that the Jew wants to strive for. Our self-actualization comes down to our choices. For Jews with a strong Torah education, much of what I have written here might be clarifying and familiar. For those without a strong foundation in Jewish philosophy, this information may come as a surprise. You may have learned something about yourself that you didn't know, but perhaps the anti-Semite does. Part of you may not want to know this, but it's important to understand Jew haters sense something in you that you may not. Now, in the Zohar writes that even as we blend into their midst, there is a ruach. Now, it could be translated in many different ways, ruach being a spirit, but it also, and I think that what it really meant is that we smell different than they do. There's something about us that's different, and they know it. As the Maharal writes, the fundamental cause of Jew hatred is that they sense that something different is in your core being. We can die in a land of physical or spiritual exile, or be reborn in the promised land of our ancestors and our descendants. Let's stop defining ourselves by the haters. Let's stop defensively reacting with never again and focusing on mere survival, and instead learn about and love what makes us strong, what makes us great, and what our unique, particular, universal mission is. Today is an opportunity to step out of the shadows, get off the fence, and to step into your role as a messenger with courage and conviction. I promise that in doing so, you can help heal the wounds of a collective past and chart a course toward a personal Jewish and human future brimming with hope, unity, and purpose. I invite you to embrace your identity fully and joyously, and to unlock the profound sense of meaning, purpose, and pleasure that comes with understanding your unique place in the world. It's absolutely incredible what this man has written, how he's going to do this. And, well, this is Baruch Fleischman. I'm very impressed by this book. Buy the book, please. Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? The statement itself, just the name of it, is bold, if you ask me.